Today, top 20 mistakes for fragging corals. Don't make these mistakes that we made.
Started with number 1, and that is not having a full toolkit. There's a lot of stuff in here that you wouldn't know you need until you need it, and some stuff that you might want to double up on too, like bone cutters, but all of these tools can be beneficial for your fragging needs, so get the whole toolkit.
Yeah, some of the stuff, using the bone cutter is actually, the best thing to snap it off. But some of the other stuff, using a forceps to just kind of break it off and grab it's better. Actually, there's little tools here. You can dig epoxy and stuff out of the rocks, the scissors, the razor, all of this stuff here, tweezers. All of it actually has a purpose, and you know what? It's pretty inexpensive. So, you know what? Having that kit around, a really big mistake, or not having it around, big mistake. All right, number 2, understand the right tool for the right job.
Yeah, so the mistake here is not knowing when or understanding when epoxy is right versus the other types of glues and gums and all kinds of other stuff. So epoxy, it's good when you need it. Yeah,
so we're talking about that 2-part epoxy. It's really inexpensive, makes your skimmer go crazy, all that stuff. For me, this is the right tool, right job when I'm doing a lot of frags and I need to do them fairly quick because I want to mix up a lot of epoxy, have a ball of it there, and be able to do a whole bunch at once, right? So outside of that, though, really not the right tool for me in most cases. But the epoxy is going to form around the object that you're going to put it in. Often works best with super glue combined. But yeah, understand when that epoxy is the best tool. It's probably one of the most commonly purchased items, but maybe not always the best just because it takes a long time to cure. Number 3 is kind of like epoxy, but the flip of that.
Yeah, so the mistake is not knowing when coral gum, the Toons coral gum, is the right tool for the job. And this is different in that it doesn't harden the entire way through like rock solid. That means it's pliable down the road.
Yeah, this one isn't as great if I'm going to do 800 corals all at once, but if I'm going to do 5 or even take careful planning with each one, it's great because it has all the benefits of epoxy, meaning it will mold around whatever the object you're trying to adhere to, both the plug or the rock, but also the coral, but also it will dry in less than 60 seconds, meaning it will form hard shell and hold it secure less than a minute, which is really, really, really valuable. It is a little bit more expensive, but you can actually, in this case, use a tiny fraction of it. So A, that looks better, but B, it might not actually be all that much more expensive if you only use 1/4 of it to achieve the job. But epoxy, also the coral gum from Toons, doesn't make your skimmer go crazy. So that's also a benefit. So understand the right tool, right job here. If I'm not doing as many frags, or if I'm just taking, I am doing a lot of frags, but I'm taking sweet care with everything, we'll ask one of them, coral gum, probably the best option. Number 4, super glue. When is that?
Yeah, so the mistake is not knowing when super glue is the right tool. This is one of my go-tos all the time, especially when I'm putting stick frags on a flat plug and I want the extra thick stuff so that it holds its shape, and I could just drop that stick on there, hold it for a few seconds, maybe swish it and put it underwater, and then it holds its shape.
To me, super glue is the best when you don't actually need any structure to support it. So if I'm using a frag like this and I can just kind of wedge whatever it is and then use the super glue to hold it there, that's probably one of the best options because the glue will dry, pretty reasonably quick, especially once it gets into water, and it's actually kind of hard to see, where the epoxies you can often see. So super glue, good. I will note that super glue sticks to almost any surface, specifically well when it's dry. So if you can apply it to the frag plug while it's dry, it will adhere to this much better than when you apply it when it's wet. It'll still work wet, but dry is just better. All right, number 5, there is a hybrid of this, and a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah, so don't mistake looking over the hybrid coral gum and super glue combo. It's kind of like making a coral gum super glue sandwich. Probably really good when you're putting frags or taking fragging and putting it right back into the tank.
I think this is actually true with epoxy as well. So you could use the super glue epoxy, super glue coral gum, either way, and they still applies the benefits from each before. But what this would do in this case is if I really want this to adhere, put a little super glue on here, then put the epoxy on the top. Now the epoxy stuck to the frag. Now put a little bit of super glue in here, put the frag in there. Now the frag is stuck to the epoxy. So you get the benefits of molding around it with an actual like adhesion with the glue. And then specifically with that coral gum, man, it holds like, you know, again in like 60 seconds. So, you know, with the epoxy, if it wiggles at all of a sudden now it's not holding on to it and formed around it as well. With the coral gum, you can get it almost instantly. So that is really, for me, the best way. Tiny, tiny, tiny little bit about a coral gum, glue that on there, smush in the coral, put the glue on there, and now you get the best of all worlds. Number 6, you can make this look ugly.
Yeah, so mistake is using too much glue. One, like you said, it doesn't look pretty, and you just got a big blob of glue. And for me too, is, you know, I've been when I cut sticks or acros or what have you, you know, I've got a whole bunch of little tiny pieces, and I'm just fast squeeze, 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 squeeze. And then you put that stick right onto inside the glue, and the glue ends up going around the tissue and covering good tissue, and it's a lot harder for it to grow, in my experience, out and around the base of a whole lot of glue.
You're probably going to kill the tissue underneath, right? And so I think this actually applies to both to glue and epoxy. Don't use so much, and if you have to use that much of it to hold it in place, you're probably using the wrong tool. Number 7, I think a lot of us make this mistake on a lot of things.
Yeah, the mistake is not planning for fragging down the road. Classic example of this, if I had that E170 in my house and 2 years later it's as full as it is and already has been trimmed, you know, a dozen times, I probably wasn't ready for all of that fragging, which means I wasn't ready by having the tools, having the plugs, having a place to put them, and now I'm just kind of like scrambling to figure it all out.
Yeah, so to me that means that I got a place to put these things in the tank, preferably not just sitting in the sand. So, you know, like one of those little magnetic racks that go in the glass is not a bad idea. There's even rocks that will just go in the sand, but they hold them securely and you know hold the little plugs in there. But having a place to put these, but actually having plugs on hand. I mean, I think a bag of 25 of these costs $5. So, you know, having a bag of these around so that you need them, always having some glue around.
Well, even when I'm digging around in my tank and I wasn't meaning to frag, but I accidentally fragged, well, do you just let that coral go? Do you throw it away? Nah, give it to somebody else. Put it on something.
I don't know if you guys are like me, but I have projects I want to do on my tank, and they're about this long. And I just kind of pick them as they come. And so if it's this weekend, I'm like, you know what? It's time to clean the tank up, do a little bonsai, and frag it up. I can't do it this weekend unless I have these tools around. So if you know you're going to do fragging, pick those things up and have them around in hand so you can do the projects that you like. Number 8, kind of touched on this earlier, but like, what do you do with all these things?
Yeah, so the mistake is not having storage space for your frags. These little frag plugs fill up a frag rack really quick. So, you know, having multiple frag racks or even a place to put them is the ticket.
Yeah, I mean, setting up a frag tank is a big step. It's a fun step, but it is a big step to set that up unless you're going to, you know, really start moving them and trading them. So, you know, just having a place to put these things, and you know, I've seen it in some of the customer service tanks here, is, you know, they're trading with each other and growing them out is really, you know, it's not always the most attractive thing in the tank, but having those little racks that go on the glass, you know, they're just a really good place to put these things. The one thing I would note is when you're using them, you know, consider putting them down a little bit lower where a lot of the lights kind of will hit it. If you put it up too high, you may think you're putting it close to the light, but it's actually missing it just due to the angle, or it's only going to hit one side. So put those things down the middle. Yes, they're not the most attractive thing in the tank, especially if it's sitting in your living room. So in that case, set up a small frag tank. And by small frag tank, it does not need to be a big, elaborate system. It could be literally a 40 breeder with some hang-on gear on it. So it does not need to be an elaborate system. So, you know, think about, if I'm going to have a bunch of frags, what am I going to do with them? Number 9, this is actually an interesting idea. I haven't done it.
Yeah, I've seen the frag racks in the sump with a small light. So don't make the mistake of not considering that for your own. If you got some space in your sump, some people are really tight on space because of the, you're jamming your skimmer and you got a fuge and all this other stuff in there. But there is water in your sump. It shares the water with your display, and all you need is like a little, Kessel 160 or something small to keep these things lit. Good to go.
It's called an acropora refugium. Actually, it's true. All the corals, you might think of like chaetomorpha or something, is soaking up all the nutrients.
Yeah.
But if you got hundreds of small frags in there that are growing, you're also going to suck up a lot of nutrients. So, if you have a little area in the tank, it could have been for the fuge, but it could also be for growing coral. And even if it's not that, and you just have a big area for your skimmer, maybe you can grow them there as well. Number 10, sometimes there's too much of a good thing.
Yes, the mistake is fragging too much at once. When you frag your sticks, when you frag your A-cans, or when you frag most of these corals, you start to see these little slimy bits floating around the tank. You get, everything kind of bunches up and gets stressed out. So save some stress and try not to do all of the tank at once, but little bits at a time.
Especially using you're using lots of epoxy and all that stuff. So if when you're fragging a handful of corals, the other corals are looking kind of pissed off, well, you know what? Just stop there and tackle some more the next day. Number 11, I don't have one of these at my house, but I should, and I'm mad every time that I don't.
And the mistake is not considering the saw. This was one of the things when I was slinging a whole bunch of corals back in the day that I've picked one up used, and I loved every minute of it. And it's not only for like fragging. So I'm cutting tiles, I'm cutting different types of frag plugs and things like that. But even after I receive corals, cutting off the frag plug to put in my tank, or cutting parts of the dead skeleton and stuff off to make it easier to go in my tank, this thing serves its purpose 100 times over for me.
There are so many reasons to use one of these things, and some of them nothing to do with fragging, in fact. But like when you get a brand new coral, let's say that I get a brand new coral and it's encrusted all over this thing. There's a couple of things that we've done. I've actually cut the bottom of this thing off all the way, so it's super thin, so I don't see the disc on it. Yep. You can cut off the pieces that you don't need, so it's not like a circle. Mm-hmm. You can actually do all kinds of things with the saw. One of the things also, if you have a wall hammer, and those things are notorious for slowly dying from one end. Mm-hmm. You can stop it by just sawing off one end, and it makes such a clean, nice cut that they tend to not get infected after that, and it actually stops all the degeneration. So really, even with acro plugs, like I can try to use the bone cutter, and sometimes I break it off and I go shooting around. Yeah. Instead, just nice little cut, just saw it right off at the glue. And then when I do that, I know I'm not getting any of the eggs or anything like that from any pests. So having one of these around, it's a little bit of an investment, but man, if you're into reefing for the long haul, you'd be happy that it's around. Number 12, a coral can actually be fragged a lot more than you think.
Yeah, the mistake is not getting enough frag plugs when you're having a fragging type of day. So these things go quick. It's amazing how I was like, I bought 25. That's probably all I need. And then I'm halfway through and I don't have any more frag plugs. And now you're stuck with little bits that you've already chopped. You got to figure out what to do with them. So just grab a whole bunch. That leads back to that other mistake of not having this stuff on hand. Just keep a stockpile of this stuff.
Yeah, so if you're gonna break out a chunk of your favorite F-flow because it just got too big, you'd be surprised. You might actually make 70 frags out of this one little chunk. Yeah. Pretty easy. Even actually, a lot of gonna frag your red dragon. There's actually, take off one branch. There's so many that you can get out of this thing. So, you might think 25 is enough, but 100 is probably better. Number 13, this is probably the most or least frequently purchased frag apparatus, but I actually like them.
Yeah, so the mistake is overlooking the tiles for frag plugs. And for me personally, I like to use it if I'm getting something encrusting, maybe even zoas or what have you, something that's growing across the surface where I can easily break the tile, or even with the saw, score the back of the tile in like a cross pattern, and then I can just snap it off really easy. So now my encrusting Mani chunks come in these nice little square chunks, and I can evenly separate them out. tiles are great.
I actually like them for a different purpose, which is spreading. So either you just get one little square tile and then you surround it with other square tiles, and then something like your Riccordia, your Xenia, your zoanthids, they just naturally spread out to the surrounding tiles. You can take them out and you got your frag right there, and you just keep that mother colony going. In fact, sometimes what I like to do is glue 4 of the tiles together for that really strong mother colony that just spreads on out to all of the ones around it, and you can actually get them to grow pretty fast. All right, number 14, I know everybody loves these pegs, but they're not always necessary.
Yeah, the mistake is not considering the discs, and it's basically the same thing as a peg, but with a wider surface area and not the little egg crate holding peg that you have to chop off or deal with or try to find a way to mount in your tank. It's really good at holding larger chunks of coral down and just weighing it down on the sand bed, and it just sits there flat. I know the frag plugs, if you shove them in the sand bed, easier for critters to tip them over or what have you. The disc just sits nice and flat. And I've also put, SPS sticks on the frag disc, and it bases out a whole lot more than on that 1-inch frag plug, and then you get little nodules coming out of it, which is really cool.
I would say that these, especially for like acres you're talking about, is if I'm not going to necessarily sell them, but I'm trading with my friends and I want to get more than a little nubbin. I want to give them something nice. This is actually great. They are heavier, so they sit around and they'll tolerate a good amount of flow. Not like the peg. The peg will actually, stand up to the most flow, obviously. But in this case, I don't have to break this peg off either later. And anytime you have to use those bone cutters and snap something off, sometimes it just goes awry, stuff pops off, it totally crumbles, all kinds of stuff. So, consider what you're trying to use this for. This is also great for encrusting coral. So, you want to just let it encrust over your Jedi mind trick or whatever it is, and just let it encrust on the whole thing better often than this tiny little guy. Now, this is near and dear to my heart, especially if you're doing it for yourself.
Yeah, the mistake is overlooking rock rubble for frags. And for you, it's like, getting into the display and not having this weird looking wonky circle that just gets in your display. It looks like nothing natural. For me, what I did is an addition to one of my frag systems, I had a small tank littered with rock rubble underneath, and then put zoas in there, and they naturally grow over all the rocks. And then I can pull a chunk out that might have 3 or 4 different types of zoas on it, and it's already individualized.
That's very cool. Yeah, I think you could do that with a lot of things. So you could actually glue a few pieces of this together, let it do what you're talking about, and then snap it apart later. The part that I really like about it, though, is I want a natural-looking tank, and I'm going to go to great lengths in many cases to do that because I've done it the other way, and I see all these plugs, and they drive me crazy for years. In this case, if I grow the acro or whatever it is on this rock, even Riccordia, whatever, I can now go. I probably have Reef Saver in my tank. Take this little Reef Saver frag chunk and glue it on there, and it will look like an extension of the rock. It will not look like I put a frag plug on there. And it's already encrusted on this. It's going to go on to the edges around it. They also make this Life Rock stuff from Carib Sea, which is basically the same thing, but the same color as their Life Rock. So if you're going to go after that, you can go after these different methods here. But if you pick something that's kind of a natural shape, it will match your aquascape a lot better and look like a even, cohesive aquascape. All right, there's one more. I bet you a lot of you haven't even thought about.
The mistake is overlooking the Aquadomes specifically for Euphyllia, branching Euphyllia and things like that. This is one that we just kind of stumbled upon looking through our frag stuff and thought that'd be pretty good for a branching Euphyllia to keep weighted down.
Yeah, so the reason I think it's really good for like a branching Euphyllia is, again, this is way heavier than this. So it stays put. It also just kind of has a natural cone to put a branching coral on. And the reason that you want it to be a little heavier for that is because a branching coral actually captures like a sail. It's going to have capture a lot more of the flow. So having something big like this actually is really nice. And if you just use some super glue or anything, or even just a tiny bit of epoxy, you can actually pop it off and then reuse it when you're done. Number 17, this actually largely applies to a new colony that hasn't been in your tank before. Yeah,
so the mistake is not dipping. And there's a lot of corals that I've got big giant pieces that I want to kind of spread out, or maybe I bought the piece with a friend and now we're going to kind of split it up. So one, you need the fragging tools, but two, you should dip that thing.
Yeah. So this is a lot of times you'll buy like a big colony of acans and then, use a saw to, carve it up into little bits and then glue it onto your discs, and you'll have 100 of these things from one colony. It's a great way to trade for other things and maybe even make a few bucks out of it. But definitely on anything new coming in, dip it first. Number 18, this is good for fragging in the tank.
Yeah, I've never done this before, but not considering a chisel is a mistake here, and after you explained it to me, I get it. And they are some longer, smaller chisels that really would help break some of the corals off of the rock.
Actually, we got this from Worldwide. That's how they do it with a lot of their encrusting corals and stuff in their tanks. When they get the colonies to grow out, how you get them off is they actually use a chisel and chisel, piece off. It has a really nice sharp edge. You can get underneath things. So if you're trying to frag a coral that's in your tank, you don't want to remove the whole thing because it's really in there. Chisel might be the right way to actually break a piece of it off so you can go frag it away. Number 19. I don't know why there's a lot of people that just believe that metal doesn't rust no matter what it is.
Yeah, the mistake is not rinsing your tools in RO water or sink water or rinsing them at all. They are stainless steel tools, but even the stainless steel tools will rust over time. Maybe not as fast as like other types of metals, but they'll rust, so rinse them.
Yeah, basically any metal is going to rust, and that's not 100% true, but specifically if you let the salt dry on it. And so, there's stainless steel rust. There's like 302 steel that will rust less, and the grades continue to go up. But there's a difference between this thing costing $5 and $85. To be honest, I would rather buy the $5 one and then just rinse it when I'm done. So all of this stuff will rust if you just put it away wet. So make sure that you rinse it off in some tap water, and it'll probably last forever. Number 20, I often get stopped by this because I think big, but you know what? There's all kinds of these.
Yeah, the mistake is not considering a frag tank. This was that next evolution of the hobby for me when I'd set up the 40 breeder, the 60, and then I set up the 125. Then I really started getting into like coral collecting and then slinging corals and growing them out and whatnot. So by the time I knew it, I had 3 or 4 frag tanks just as frag tanks. I didn't use them for anything else. But it was really fun. I could go down there and I could cut things up. It was like a little laboratory and gluing things together. And the best part was giving them out to people.
The little laboratory piece caught me. I think that you can grow out a lot of coral, and it doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be a really fancy tank designed specifically for frags. It could be something as small as a 40 breeder. Generally shallow is fairly nice, but it doesn't have to be elaborate, and then you can go ahead and do this. One of the cool things I saw actually is, so we get a little survey after you buy from us, and one of them says, like, how many tanks do you have? And 8% of people have more than 5 tanks, right? So like almost 1 in 10 of you watching has more than 5 tanks. That was kind of a shocking number, but if you think about frag tanks, this is an obvious extension of the hobby. Let's grow some stuff out. Let's trade it with friends. Let's trade it from the fish store. Let's just experience like what it's like. All right, so I got actually a magic number 21 fragging tip here, because I didn't know this, but I learned it from watching some of the pros like Worldwide. Is a lot of people think that, I'm going to buy a colony of acros and I'm going to grow out these little nubbins and then I'm going to get them to the size that you would sail. It's actually the opposite. It's grow a colony out, get the colony super duper healthy, and then break off the nubbins and put them in there and sell those, right? So it isn't about growing tiny ones into saleable versions or tradable versions. It's about growing a mother colony out and then selling all the little nubbins right there.
Keep producing,
And the reason for that is a big, healthy colony just reproduces way faster than fresh cut little nubbins. So, hot tip there. So if you want to learn more about fragging, man, we actually have like a little Fragless playlist that you can see right here. So go check it out. But you can also see on our website all these fragging tools that we talked about.